Okay. I have 6 o'clock. I'd like to welcome you all to the school committee meeting in the evening of October 1st. You have before you an agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I understood that we were going to remove the vote on the CPS handbook since we haven't seen it as yet. Should I make that by motion or just by agreement?
Amend the agenda.
I would amend to remove that for now.
Anybody else?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Also, we are going to, since we do not have our scholars here tonight, we're going to pass on A and B on the agenda. So can I have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Comments from the public?
Good evening.
Come
For
up to
those
the
of you that don't know me, my name is Edie Ray.
Okay. Do you want to come up to the
You
microphone?
could use
can
this
shout,
microphone if you'd like. Well, the people in the
I
back
know.
have a hard time hearing too.
Hello, people in the back. Good evening, my name is Edie Ray. I'm gonna read this because there's some points here that I don't want to, and I don't wanna misspeak. Shortly after 9 o'clock this morning, I was in my truck, stopped at the stop sign on Myacomet Avenue at its intersection with Surfside Road. I observed a young lady on the bike path headed towards Surfside with her head down, not looking right nor left, proceed through the stop sign on the bike path. She was closely followed by a group of young people, 8 or so, who also proceeded through the stop sign without stopping. For those unfamiliar with this spot, it's a very busy one. There are very large trucks entering and leaving that Myacomet Road area, and a NERTA bus stop and a retail food establishment adjacent as well. I realized that these children were most likely part of a gym class, and I was immediately concerned for their safety. After they passed, I turned onto Surfside Road and then pulled into Myacomet Road and parked my truck and got out, hoping to keep a tragedy from happening to these kids. I stood by that stop sign on the bike path as the children approached, and I asked them to stop. I pointed to the stop sign and told them that I had just seen them bike through the previous stop sign in front of my truck, and I asked if they'd been told by their teacher to stop at the stop signs. One student answered, "I guess so, my bad." I asked where their teacher was, and I was directed toward an individual some distance behind this group. The children then biked away. I waited for the teacher, introduced myself, and told her what I had seen and how concerned I was for these children. I asked if they had been told to stop at the stop signs, and she said, and I quote, "they had discussed it." She then went on her way. As soon as I got to work and could speak on my cell phone, I called the high school office. That was at 9:31. I told Renee, who answered the phone in the office, what I had just seen and asked to speak to the principal. I was told he would call me back. At 9:41, I called the Nantucket Police Department and reiterated what I had seen, and they advised me to call the school's resource officer, which I did, and I left a message on the recording there. I was hopeful that someone would call me back soon so that this matter could be addressed in a timely manner and perhaps avert an accident. At 10:09, I called the school again and had to leave a message on the recording. At 1:24, I received a call from Officer Mansfield, one of the school's resource officers. I told him what I had observed much earlier in the day and told him of the actions I had taken. He informed me that I was wrong to do what I did, and I quote, "You have no right to tell anyone what to do." He further told me numerous times during our 6-minute conversation that by speaking to the students and their teacher, that's how trouble starts, and I quote. He told me in no uncertain terms what I did was wrong and that the proper action to take was to call the police department and let them handle it. I informed him it was just not in my nature to stand by when anyone, particularly children, were in danger. At one point during our conversation, Officer Mansfield, in response to my once again trying to point out that these school children during their gym class were in danger by not stopping at the stop signs, he replied, and I quote, "Well, you know, everyone does it." I was and am appalled. At 1:31, I once again called the Nantucket High School office and was told the principal was not in his office and was told that he would be told that I had called. I have yet to hear from him. My flurry of calls this morning was done in the hope of correcting this dangerous behavior as soon as it occurred. I believe it is now called a teachable moment. The moment has passed. I am bringing today's incident to this public meeting because I believe the families of these children have a right not only to know what went on in gym class today, but how the professional people and those entrusted with their education and safety of their children have responded to it. As an old volunteer firefighter and EMT, I have unfortunately seen what damage a car's impact can do to a body. And to be sure, if I see children in a dangerous situation again, I will react, not just drive away. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Mrs. Ray.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, saying none, we'll move on to our SRO presentation.
So I will just introduce Officers Mansfield and Thompson. We have been fortunate to have school resource officers, 2 resource officers provided by the Nantucket Police Department. And of course, recent events, I think, pointed out just how important they are to our schools. I'm not going to go through that. I think my letter to the community speaks to their value to us. But as we have each year, they will present a day in the life of the school resource officers. So Keith and Cassie, welcome.
Thank you.
Just point up the slide.
I think you guys have that, most of it anyways, so.
So as Cassie's pulling it up, again, I've been here at the school for 3 years. Cassie's been here a lot, 5, 6 years?
5. I think.
5 years. So there is no normal day in the life, and she'll get into it, for being a police officer. And as we saw on Friday, nothing is normal about what we do. We're doing something different every single day, and obviously the main purpose we're here is for the safety of the school, the children, and everything else around here. And that's why we do it. We both do it for a reason. We love working with the kids. It's the things that we absolutely strive to do, and that's exactly why we're here. So she's pulling up now. Come on. Here we go. We hope. There.
All right. So if someone asks a typical day, as Keith said, we don't really have a typical day. We get here between 7:30 in the morning and leave between 3 to 3:30. Parking, believe it or not, is the #1 complaint by most people and parents. So that takes up our morning time. We then just start the day. We consult with school staff, teachers. We try to build relationships with students. I teach an introduction to criminal justice class in the high school for juniors and seniors, which meets Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Lunch with students, if we can get there. School walkthroughs. I think, how many miles do you walk a day usually?
About 5, 6.
5 miles a day.
I usually start, we get here that early, but the start of the day is usually, there's a before school program down at the lower school, so I'm here by 7, if not a little bit earlier every day. I hit that before school program with the kids, whether it's just hanging out, they're finishing their homework, they're doing something, so that's, we try to cover it most of the time. As soon as the kids show up, we're here.
Yep. And then at the end of the day, we assist with the pickup, getting buses moved out, getting cars away from the buses, pick up and drop off. And then clearing the schools out. For some reason, the kids don't want to be here sometimes all day long, but then at 2:20 they don't want to leave. So I generally, especially in the high school, middle school, we try to, I don't want to say push them away, but go to the library and do work there, supervise, go to your sporting event, or go home. So that's typically about 2:50, 3 o'clock is when we try to ask them to find an activity to do and not hang out in the hallways. In addition to the typical day, we utilize K-9 Moby and Keith up at the high school and middle school for narcotic searches. And we train teachers and staff on lockdown protocols. We meet with parents if necessary. We call parents back if necessary. I had a parent phone call today. Sometimes we have to do truancy and house visits. So we might go with the school social worker to a student's house and just try to get to the bottom of maybe why they're not coming in, or sometimes need the extra little motivation of an officer to be like, let's go. We're not going to sleep in bed all day today. Sometimes DCF contacts us and we assist with them, or we assist school officials sometimes with some DCF reporting. Any juvenile criminal cases we deal with. Keith is all about bike safety. It's like his forte, setting up courses. And then when it comes to current trends for teachers and staff, they sometimes ask us about vaping, any kind of use, that kind of things. And then as we said, in the everyday is different and unusual. You can talk about this one.
Yeah, so we have an after-school program that we've done for, this will be our 3rd year. It's always been in place. We kind of reformed it in the past few years. We call it Leadership Explorers, where it's the middle school children, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are eligible for it. The way it runs this year is every single half day we take the kids that have signed up, and we've already got probably at least 30 kids that have signed up for it, and we plan programs for them to do, going back into the community to donate time. In the past, we've gone to our island home, and we visited there, helped them out. We've done the senior center. We've also gone to Sherburne Commons. We've done like probably at least 3 or 4 what we call technology days, where the kids will go in and the kids will tell the older people at these places to bring your iPads, iPhones, cameras, whatever you want. And because these kids are so in tune with technology, we sit down with them. They've helped them set up accounts on emails, you name it, Facebook accounts, banking, all this stuff. They've sat down and helped them do. So when they walk out, now they have a laptop where they can text pictures or send pictures. So it's been a great program. It's really worked well in the past few years. So we've kind of built it up again. We start in the fall, where really soon we're going to do a food drive, and we culminate that food drive with an open gym night to celebrate it, where they get in by giving another food item, and then we take our group, bring the whole group down to the food pantry before Thanksgiving and donate all the food that we've got. So we're trying to teach them there's a lot that they can do even at their young age throughout the community to give back and help. At the end, we usually do, last thing we do is a beach cleanup, or any other place. We've gone to the skate park, we've gone to disc golf, and we do one big day at the end. We do this in collaboration with the community school. They've been great. We work really well together. They've been a great resource to help us with it, with extra bodies, and they have they're great in tune with the kids as well. So we do that, and like I said, everything we do is free. We don't the kids aren't charged for anything. We provide food at these half days after school so they can come in. We know that's usually a gap time before their sports start, so it's a good time to grab them and take them. And they're always looking for something to do before they have.
And they get second lunch, because they get
Yeah.
first lunch at school an hour before,
Yeah.
and then we give them pizza an hour later, so
Yep.
second lunch. Probably, I think it's my favorite activity that we do, and probably yours as well. Last year we started to do Shop with a Cop. So the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office runs this, and they sponsor it. And we pick 1 or 2 kids to come with us off island. We ask the school usually who we should take. And at the beginning of the school year, we do it, and at Christmas time. And our police union donates. We did this year for back to school shopping. They donated $200 for one of our students to go and pretty much shop free for all shopping. The Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office donates like a backpack and a bunch of school supplies. And then lunch was donated by the Cove over in Yarmouth. And then, like I said, the police union bought the rest of it and took the kids shopping to Old Navy and whatnot. So that's fun. It's fun. Like they get to go off with us for a day. We get in like an unmarked police car on the other side, and they think it's pretty cool. So that's my favorite event. Even though it's like more of a one-on-one, that's probably the best one. So I think that's it. Questions? But I could questions for you guys.
I do, and I apologize, I was trying to look it up in the Boston Globe, but it's asking me for my email address, and I'm not gonna give it to him. The governor banned vaping, correct?
Ban the sale.
Ban
The sale.
Banned the sale of vaping devices, but not the vaping itself?
Not the vaping itself, people still have it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not allowed in the schools.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, so we're not, I mean,
But yeah, they banned
Yeah,
they
they-
banned the sale, 4-month moratorium on sale of vaping products.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
yeah.
I believe, if I may, through the chair, that that is the health department that
Yes,
enforces that, though,
exactly.
not the police department. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
I apologize, I just wanted an update, because
No,
I thought I had heard something on the
Yeah.
TV and the Globe wouldn't let me in, so I figured you'd know.
Yes, yes.
So I would hope that the health department has been active on our island with establishments, and I will follow up on that.
I don't think I am. All set. Thank you. I don't have anything, but thank you for
Yeah,
what
no
you
problem.
do. I appreciate your presence.
I have a couple of comments. I can't look at you and speak
That's
in the
okay.
microphone,
That's
so I'm
fine.
sorry.
We can move over. Just wanna see.
Know that I really do want to look at you. When you talk about the conversations, is that casual conversations that come up as you're in the cafeteria in the schools?
Yeah.
You find that you're having just a lot of,
We get a lot of information. We have a really good sharing with both the police, the guidance counselors. We have a good relationship with them. I mean, there's not a day that I don't like go to just talk to a guidance counselor that just says, oh, hey, saw this kid. Is everything all right? I mean, I hit almost every lunch I can. I try to like bounce around to the lunches because that's the best time where kids. And I will say, they want to see you. They're thankful. I go out to recess. As you know, I have the dog. Sometimes we throw a ball. I show up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and now the kids sometimes know my routine. First couple of minutes, I go out and we play catch, and the kids come out of the woodwork because they know I'm coming. And I think they just want to talk to you. They've never had that opportunity to like talk to a police officer. It's always like they're coming, they're going, and to be in the school and have two of us in the school that are accessible. I mean, if we're in the office, people are knocking on the door. Can I ask you a question? And our door is always open if we're there.
Never
We're not really in the office much. I mean, if I'm there once, maybe twice a day, that's it. But I just think it's good to be accessible. These kids, I mean, I'll admit fully, I feel like a rock star when I go to the grocery store because every single kid's coming up and fist pumping me and saying hi. My wife's like, come on, we gotta go, we gotta get through. But it's good, it's great. I mean, we do it, like I said earlier, we do it because we love the kids. And it's just a great opportunity for us to be here and be able to do it. And we're always looking to improve. And if anybody has anything they want us to look at, we're more than happy.
well, I know we feel very fortunate on being able to have both of you here at our district. Question on the Leadership Explorers, is that the former Yale program?
It is,
It
yes.
is.
Yes.
Renamed it, retweaked it a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yep. Okay. And then just while you're here and kind of backing up with what Steve just asked, we have great concern, of course, with marijuana being legal in Massachusetts, and we've talked about this at school committee, just being concerned about having kids bringing products in. Have you been able to have some conversations with the powers that be in the town and dispensaries to have a better understanding, or are they aware of our concerns, and are there precautions put in place or procedures put in place that you're aware?
I am not aware, and I haven't, sat down and had any of those kind of conversations. I will tell you though, between all the searches we did last year with the K-9, and we've already done one this year. We were actually supposed to do one on Friday, and then everything happened. That was why we were both in the office on Fridays, because we were going to see Jen Sarah's to go do a search. But I don't think we've found. The dog hasn't found. He's only found like a couple times. You know what I mean? It's not.
Cars and a little bit we have.
But it's not like every time he searches, we're finding
Mm-hmm.
marijuana items or paraphernalia, if you will.
Good.
So.
All right, thank you.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
One of our particular concerns, in case you do happen to be speaking to these people, is food items. Things that kids could grab onto knowingly or unknowingly. Is any of the stuff that you found food items, or is it the traditional plant material.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been any of the food items, and we're pretty keen on that, like to look, and the
Yeah.
dog is trained, my dog is trained he could sniff out and find those food items if they were present. 'Cause with the new eating it and everything it's a concern of ours as well.
But we either
Yeah.
find traditional, like
Yeah, traditional.
actual marijuana, or like the dad pens, which is a vape for marijuana.
It's like an oil produced in
THC,
it, it's
yeah.
kind of it's a vape for marijuana. So, but the
Thank
trends
you.
are changing, and we're always trying to keep up with the trends, and
Do you get, in your interactions with the students, do you find that that may prevent some problems out on the street later on?
I think sometimes it does, especially at the high school level. You know, you can sometimes have like I don't want to say real conversations with me. Even if you pull them aside, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Or you're just like, sometimes you get them and you just have them think about it for a minute. You know, sometimes I've laid out the consequences. Like, if you do this, this is what could happen. And they think about it for a second. Or, you know, maybe it prevents it from doing that. Maybe it doesn't. I like to think it does.
yeah, I
but-
think we're integral with the principals, because when an incident happens, most times they incorporate us into what they would call like a re-entry in, to explain what the consequences maybe could have been. And we put it in the back of their head, just saying, you know, you really don't want this stuff to happen. Cassie, I mean, we're trained in all the schools. We all go to the schools. There's not like, I have this school, I have that school. But I tend to kind of float down to the lower schools and deal with the kids. And now being here 3 years, the sixth graders that were, you know, that started a couple years ago, and I'm seeing them grow. And I know them, and I know their names, and I think it's a good thing, because now they do feel comfortable. They've come in and, you know, they talk to me, or I see them if maybe they've gotten in a little bit of trouble, and I can sit down and say, hey, you never did this before. You never, and we can, and it's good when, even though it's bad when they've gotten in trouble, but it's good when you see them like put their head down, and you can see they truly are like, they feel bad. They're like, I let you down, didn't I? I'm like, yeah, you've never done this before. So I just think that interaction is really well with the kids, and building some type of relationship where if you had one, it's hard to build everywhere, but I think we're doing our best building it.
Young?
Well, not to keep carrying this conversation on, but it's kind of important. My bigger concern is students are underage to even get a hold of it. I'm hopeful that, you know, who sold it to them, it's secured through these channels. Does that ever happen? Do you ever get a lead on and, you know, have the conversation with that one? That would be my concern.
With vape or marijuana, or what are we talking about?
Finding marijuana, you say usually find the real stuff, not necessarily.
If we find it, yeah.
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 It goes to the next level?
If we can find the next level, they tend not to want to tell us about the next level, and we can only do so much. If, let's say, we did find marijuana on a student through a search, we would bring the parents in and have a conversation about that. But they are under no obligation to tell us.
I know, and that's the part that just burns me to no end. And I also like to say, I understand the town has created some sort of task force to do with these dispensaries. I would hope that some of us get involved with that so that we have a real say in what goes on or what's happening and the constraints and the control and what have you. I just want to put that out there. And in the position I'm in where I work, I tend to have a lot of real conversations with people. They just walk in and they want to disclose things. So I found that out in the last couple of weeks. And I just want to make sure, and I told that person that make sure that someone from the school or the school committee or whatever is a part of that conversation. Okay, I just want to put that out. But thank you guys. Again, I do appreciate you being there and help monitoring what's going on with our kids.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. MCAS results.
I'm going to let Beth and Michael Horton take you through that. I don't know if you're comfortable where you are looking at your paper copies while the public looks here, or whether you want to
I think
move.
I
I'd
want
like
to
to go
move.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
okay.
So I'm hoping that tonight will be the first time in many years that shifting to MCAS results will actually be a positive topic or a change in the right direction here. My name is Michael Horton. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Assessment for STEM. And co-presenting with me tonight is Dr. Beth Hallett, the Deputy Superintendent of Nantucket Public Schools. I'm basically going to set the stage, and Beth's going to walk you through some charts and graphs of our results, grades 3 through 10 for English language arts, math, and science. Then at the end, I'm going to wrap it up with some accountability data. There's a couple of really big, exciting things tonight, and I hope you can spot them and you hear about them as we both present. But for me, for someone who loves data, first and foremost, this is the first time in 7 years that we have consistent data for 3 years in a row for grades 3 through 8 for English language, arts, and math. If you remember No Child Left Behind, in 2014, everyone's going to be a 100. Every school has to get every kid to proficient or above. In 2012, states started recognizing, ooh, that's not going to happen. So they came up with a new temporary system with cumulative performance indexes. And then Park entered the discussion of a national test. And recently, we've transitioned back to a next generation assessment system, which is also known as MCAS 2.0. So just to point out some things, because there are still going to be a few subjects that are still in the legacy scoring system, like high school science, biology for grade 9. This is the system that's been in place for 12, 13 years, where every 20 points is basically a different tier or achievement level. And you could see proficient was a target. All students really wanted to get up to 240. With the new system, it ranges from 440 as the bottom up to 560. So you just kind of shift your thinking a little bit, get out of the 200 to 280 range, and think, okay, we're talking 440 up to 560. Every 30 points is a different tier. So not meeting spans, 440 up to 470. And here, underlined, the bar here, the target is 500. So 500 to 529 is meeting expectations. So throughout the presentation tonight, look for numbers approaching 500. That's our goal. We want to be at 500. We even want to be in the top side of 500. So grade 5 science, grade 8 science, grade 10 ELA, grade 10 math. This is the first year of next generation. Okay, so like I said, it's great that we have 3 years of data. That's only grades 3 through 8 in English language, arts, and math. And you're going to see a lot of places where you can look at 2017, 2018, 2019. But for these areas, grade 5 science, grade 8 science, and then high school ELA math, this is the first year. So it's considered a baseline. So sometimes, accountability is not quite apples to apples. And I'll talk about that at the end. And last but not least, I think this is a little more fair of a system. In the old system, if you remember, students were given different point values in 25-point increments of 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. And any student who is at proficient scored a 100. Any student at advanced scored a 100. You put that all together in big vat, you average it up, you have this CPI idea, which will still exist for high school biology towards the end of presentation. That was what accountability was used for in the past. Very important, and you got to think about this carefully. It's all about average now. So every student who scores between 440 and 560, their score goes into the big pot, divided by how many students for that grade level or for the school or for the subgroup, and you get an average, okay? Your average is your own score for your school or the group. The state then sets targets based upon your previous score. So your individual targets are your own targets. So we had a 469 average in the group, say, last year. Maybe now it's 472, okay? That is the average. So now students who score advanced actually really help your average. They really pull up your overall score. It's much more fair because it's based upon your own score, opposed to saying everyone will get 240 and above. Everyone's going to be 100, okay? That was the system that was targeted 2014. So in closing, for this introduction piece, it's been 5 years of transition. This is the first year that I'm really excited that we have a good, solid 3 years of data that we can look at and spot some trends and start making some conjectures and react to it. Okay, so without further ado, I'll be back at the end to talk about accountability. Beth is going to walk you through all the graphs for grades 3 through 10.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Mike said, I will be presenting the MCAS data for each of the grade levels for all students. And I'm just going to be presenting the numbers and help you observe the data as we see it. So as we go through this, I want you to think a little bit about what this might mean or what this might mean to us. But we're very excited for some of this data. So to start out, we have grade 3, and as you can see, we made some very nice improvements. We moved from 31% of students exceeding and meeting expectations in 2018 to 49% in 2019. We also saw that fewer students are in the not meeting expectations category from 9% in 2018 to 5% in 2019. So that's 3% above the state, which is great. So in looking at grade 4 English language arts, grade 4 had a little bit of a struggle in 2019. Scores in exceeding meeting expectation categories dropped from 52% in 2018 to 36% in 2019. It is important to know that we are not looking at the same group of students. We are looking at students from the previous year as we see these comparisons. So it's a different cohort of students that we are looking at, and that's an important piece to remember as you go through this data. However, the not meeting expectations category did remain the same. We're not going up, which is good. And an interesting point is that we are equal to the state in the not meeting expectations category this year. So we know that this is an area of work, and we will certainly be addressing that through our professional development and our work for the year. In grade 5, English language arts, we saw some really nice gains. They went from 45% exceeding and meeting expectations in 2018 to 53% exceeding meeting expectations in 2019. That's an 8% increase. That's great. While there was a drop in 1% in the not meeting expectation category from 5% to 6%, more students moved from partially meeting expectations in the orange to meeting expectations in the green. And that's the direction we want to go. We want to go right to left. So that is a great thing right there. This also allowed our 5th grade to move its average scale score to that 501.2, which is exactly what Mr. Horton was talking about earlier today. We are looking for that 500 proficient meeting expectations point, so that's great. Grade 3 math. Also made some very significant increases. In 2018, 27% of all students were meeting or exceeding expectations, but we saw a leap of 15% in these two categories for 2019 with 42 meeting exceeding. This is a great success. In addition, 4% fewer students are not meeting expectations, so that's down from 10% in 10% in 2019 from 14% in 2018. And we are very happy to see an increase of 7.4 in the average scaled scores from 490.2 in 2018 to 497.6. So we are moving closer to that 500 mark. So this is all good news. For grade 4 math, we can see that the scores decreased slightly by 1 percentage point from 25% exceeding meeting expectations in 2018 to 24% in 2019. However, the good news is that we were able to move more students out of the not meeting expectations to partially meeting expectations, and we dropped by 3% of students in the not meeting expectations category. We also noticed that there was a 1 point decrease in the average scaled score from 2018 to 2019. So we do know that that's an area we need to work on. For grade 5 math, we saw some great increases here. There was a 5% gain from 2018 to 2019, from 43% exceeding and meeting expectations to 48%. We also saw a 3% decrease in the 5th graders not meeting expectations. Finally, we saw some great numbers in student growth. Student growth is dependent on prior years of testing. So this was really good for us to see that they were in the high 60s, which means that that is more than average growth. 15 to 19 point difference from the state. So that is a nice thing to see as well. So in science, fifth grade science, we have to remember that we are looking back at the legacy test for 2018. 2019 is the first time that we have the next generation science test, and that's for fifth grade and eighth grade. So you'll hear this again when I present eighth grade. So we saw some improvement from 2018, but we have to remember we aren't really looking at apples to apples, but we still can see some successes and we can certainly make some comparisons. In 2019, 47% of our students were exceeding or meeting expectations, and as compared to 34% advanced proficient on the legacy test in 2018. Again, we are not looking at the exact same assessment, so we have to consider that as we do some comparisons. Only 7% of our students were not meeting expectations in 2019, whereas 16% were in the warning or failing category the year before. So that's a very nice thing too. It is important to note that 5% fewer students were not meeting expectation than the state. So Nantucket is at 7% and the state is at 12%. Okay, moving on to middle school. With grade 6, we have 3 years of data from the Next Generation Assessment, and it's great to see this 3-year trend. It helps us to understand better what's happening and how we can make improvements and how we can celebrate things that are working well. We see a steady improvement in ELA over the course of 3 years, with scores improving by almost 10 percentage points and exceeding meeting expectations each year, which is fantastic. We also have seen a decrease in the partially meeting and not meeting expectations each year, with a 5% decrease in students not meeting expectations. So this is also a great thing to celebrate. We did see a very small drop, 1 point, in the average scaled score between 2018 and 2019, but we are on our way to hitting that 500 mark, and we are confident that we're moving more children forward. And remember, forward means going right to left. So grade 7, English Language Arts, we saw a slight decline over 3 years, from 45% in 2017 to 42% in 2018 and 41% in 2019. So again, something that we need to pay attention to carefully. We also saw an increase in students not meeting expectation from 15% the previous 2 years to 19%. Obviously a little higher than we would like to be. So on a positive note, though, in 2019, we did meet the state in percentage of students exceeding expectations, and that's the blue column. So we are glad that we are making some increases, although we know that this is an area that we will need to focus some of our energy. For grade 8 English Language Arts, we saw a little bit of a slip in 2019. In 2017 and 18, we were at 45% exceeding meeting, but it decreased to 33% in 2019. And obviously, this is an area that needs improvement, so we will be looking carefully here. On the bright side, we did reduce the number of students not meeting expectations by 3%. And we moved more students to partially meeting expectations, which is good. Again, that orange column went up a little bit, meaning we moved more students out of the red and into the orange. And we also have 1% fewer students in the not meeting expectations category than the state. Not a lot, but still a small improvement, and we are happy to focus carefully on this going forward. So now we look at math in the middle school. Grade 6 saw some nice recovery of 12 percentage points in the exceeding meeting expectations after a little dip to 25% in 2018, up to 37% in 2019. In the not meeting expectations category, we held steady at 10% for 2018 and 19, and we are at the same level of the state for 2019. While we are still not above 50 in the student growth percentile, which kind of marks the average growth, we did see some improvement, and we feel confident that we are on the right trajectory. In grade 7 math, We did see some regression from 39% in 2018 to 26% in 2019. And again, we need to remember this is a different cohort of students. We have to keep that in mind. We're not looking at the same group. We're looking at a different group each year. We did lower the percentage of our not meeting expectations by 4%, from 21% in 2018 to 17% in 2019, and that's closing the gap with the state to 4 percentage points as opposed to 7 percentage points, and you can see that here. So our student growth continues to be over 50 and slightly higher than the state's SGP. So again, we're heading in the right direction. We need to put a little more effort and understand carefully what we can do to improve here. But we're glad to see some growth over the last 3 years with the same assessment. Grade 8 math saw some nice improvements in 2019 with steady gains since 2017. In 2019, 38% of 8th graders are exceeding or meeting expectations. Some are, up from 32% in 2018 and 26% in 2017. 4% fewer 8th graders were in the not meeting expectations category from 2018 to from 19% to 15%. However, students are also making solid growth over the 3-year period from SGP above 50% in 2018 and a slight increase in 2019. Again, we are seeing appropriate student growth with SGP over 50, higher than the state, and with small increases between 2018 and 2019. Okay, so grade 8 science. We are pleased to see some growth, but again, we have to consider that legacy versus next generation test. We're looking at 2 different assessments, and we want to celebrate the fact that there were still some improvements, and we're very pleased. 42% of our 8th graders are exceeding or meeting expectations in science, and that's a much higher percentage than in 2016, 17, and 18. We're very pleased about that. We are closing the gap with the 16% not meeting expectations. The state's is at 13, and so we are getting closer, and it's a small percentage difference much smaller percentage difference than in the last 2 years. So that's a good thing. For grade 10, we now get to the high school. As we move on to grade 10, again, we need to remember that these students took the next generation assessment for the first time. And we can't make as many direct comparisons. We really are looking at different scoring systems. But again, I think we can celebrate some things, and definitely we need to keep in mind that this is our baseline, and this will help us to plan our direction and our trajectory going forward. In 2019, 64% of all 10th graders are in the exceeding or meeting expectations categories. And obviously this is quite different than what we have seen with advanced and proficient in 2016, 17, and 18. While we can't make those strong comparisons, we can observe that students in the not meeting expectations categories did stay at 7%, and that is the same percentage in the warning and failing category. We are also higher than the state in our scoring, so we are very pleased about that. We know that the state also is looking to understand what this new assessment will bring and how we move forward this way. So, and now looking at 10th grade math. With 10th grade math, we are in the same situation. This is a baseline year for our sophomores taking the next generation assessment for the first time. So what we can report is that 56% of our students were exceeding or meeting expectations. 9% of them did not meet an expectation. This number is lower than last year's warning and failing percentage, but again, we aren't able to make those really strong comparisons. What we can say, though, is that we saw some healthy student growth in the mid-60s, which is more than 10 points above the state in student growth. And moving to biology. So for high school biology, this is the last year with the legacy test. We can make some appropriate comparisons with previous years. We will also mention that this is the first year for next generation curriculum testing. There were items on the current ninth grade biology test or the high school biology test that did include new curriculum that has been a shift over the last few years with next generation science. So things to look at. High school biology students dipped a little bit from 83% in 2018 to 80% in 2019. And while there there was a slight increase in the warning and failing, just a small increase, while there's a little bit of slippage, we're still performing above the state average across the board. So that is an important piece to keep in mind. So I know that this was mostly numbers. And we want to share with you that we will be having hopefully we'll be having a workshop where we can go into a deeper data dive with you about school data, specific pieces, maybe some inferences through what our teachers and our administrative staff has been doing to look carefully at data and to think about how this affects instruction, assessment, and curriculum going forward. So I am going to turn this back over to Mr. Horton, and he's going to bring you through a few more pieces. Thanks.
So looking at this as an audience member makes me think, Jen, that we need to have like the whole wall, you know, for the video, for the screen, because I know most of you in the back, you can't see these numbers. So I'm going to call out some of the numbers, unless you have it in your packet or you have it electronically. Dr. Hallett alluded to this, is that you cannot make comparisons from 4th grade 2019 to 4th grade 2018, okay? We do this naturally, but it's two different groups of students. So in preparation for that workshop coming up, principals and other school leaders are looking at students over time, the same students, so tracking students kind of diagonally. So if you look at what's kind of in blue here, but in 2017 as 3rd graders, this group, this average, this is the first year back in 2017, their scaled score average was 492 and 2/10. Okay, in grade 4, it went up to 499 and 9/10. So right there at 500 at that target of meeting expectations. And then this year, as 5th graders, so now they've gone through, they actually were in NES in grade 3, which by the way, there's only 2 years of graphs there because that data is NIS. And back when this current 5th grader group just moved on, they were still 3rd graders back at NES. But last year as 5th graders, they scored 501 and 2/10. So it's really cool to see that progression over time. That is something that we like to look at as administrators. Because if you were to look at 2019's 4th graders at 494 and 7/10, you compared it to 2018's 4th graders who were just there at 500, you say, oh man, they went down 5 points. Yes, comparing that cohort of kids to the previous year's cohort of kids. But if you look at themselves to themselves, back in 3rd grade, they were at 493. So you can see, okay, good, they're going in the right direction. This is really exciting for people who love this type of data, because if you remember years ago, I would look at kids from grade 3 through grade 10, like 7 years of data. So how are we functioning as a district, which is very, very important from the big picture. That's just ELA. So then for math, I decided, let's look at something at the other end of the spectrum. And if you look at last year's 8th graders, 494, as 7th graders, 491 and 1/10, and then back in 2017 as 6th graders, 490 and 8/10. So even if you see some dips or some flat scores year to year in grade 7 or grade 6, as you talked about, a little regression that we recouped, overall, students are headed in the right direction as a district. That is very good sign, and that is very, very healthy. Science, it's harder to look because 2019 was the first year of Next Generation. So this is all we have. So all we have here is says, okay, in grade 5, science is within a point of the state. Okay, that's not bad, but one of our goals is to be in the top half, to move ahead, to be above 50, to be above 500. For grade 8, 493, it's pretty close to 498. Okay, that's all we have. But as Dr. Hallett showed, we do have biology because they're still legacies. We have years of data on our high school science biology scores. As you can see, this is CPI. Okay, hopefully I blew that up enough so you can see that's still in the CPI system. It went from 89 to 89.6 to 92.5, or excuse me, 92 and 5/10, if I say it correctly. So that's very exciting to see, and we would hope for those trends to continue. Okay, hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, buckle up. What does it all mean? Okay, accountability. Years ago, district schools were labeled as restructuring or in need of assistance or corrective action, and it meant you had to do some things like changing your calendar or changing leadership. There's a whole bunch of things that would come along with corrective action and restructuring. Nowadays, that's translated into accountability. And this is where I hope you can see some real big positives. Okay, so I want to explain this chart, and I want to see if everyone can figure out what's really good news here. So NIS in 2018, all students, all right, scored 60% towards their proficiency targets. All right, so there's a whole bunch of different categories that they have to score, say 100 points, and as a group, they scored 60 points. So they scored 60% of the total possible points. The lowest 20% of achieving students, they also have a target, okay? And of their targets that were set, they scored 95% towards what their targets were based upon the previous year. So together last year in 2018, those two numbers were averaged out, so those are equal, all students added with lowest divided by 2, and the school ends up with a 78%. Your target as a school is 75, okay? So that was awesome. If you remember, we celebrated NIS last year, made their accountability improvement target. So in 2019, we not only made it, we actually went up. So that's really awesome, exciting news. I know Eve Marie and Donna have already celebrated with their staff with different notices and things in the mailboxes. Like, this is really cool. If you haven't heard, go check it out. All students were at 89%, and the lowest, the bottom 20, were only at 75. That's still like meeting. Yes, that is a drop from 95, so that's something that school leaders and teachers are looking at and trying to dig deeper, and that will come in part 2 of this presentation. When you average those together, you get 82%. That is awesome, okay? Now, the state does something really wild. These numbers stick with you for X number of years, all right? It's cumulative, all right? So if once you score a value, it haunts you for a while. So when you score well, that's really good because you're stuck with a good score for a while. So that's what is awesome about this. This 82 is going to be around for a little while. In the old days, it was 5 years of data, okay? It was like times 4, times 3, times 2, times 1, add up by 10, divide it up. Right now, they're only doing the 2 years of data because 2017 was baseline. So really, 2018 was the first year to compare against the baseline. So what they're doing here is 60% of 2019. So 60% of 82 and 40% of the 78 averages out to an 80, okay? That, again, is above 75. So NIS is labeled as meeting or exceeding targets. That is awesome. That is a great thing. We haven't had that ability to say that in quite some time, going back to corrective action and restructuring. My prediction is it will be at least 3 years, and it might be 20, 30, 50, because that adds up to 100%, I think. Yeah, 20, 30, 50. So these numbers will be less and less each year. I'm not sure if they're going to go 5. We'll have to wait and see, okay? CPS, same kind of chart. CPS, relatively flat, 64% and 62%. So when you take 60% of 62 and 40% of 64, and actually it's probably some rounding going on in there, you end up with 63. Therefore, this is not a 75, so CPS is labeled as substantial progress toward targets. Actually, if you look deeper, it will say not requiring assistance. There are other schools that need a lot more help than Cyrus Pierce out there, but this is why this is not meeting, because this number is not 75. Because, if you're paying attention, it'll explain the last column. The high school, 2019, actually did the best of anyone. Actually beat NIS, all right, with an 83. That's awesome. How'd they do it? Oh my God, look at that. The lowest achieving 20% students last year in grade 10, they hit everything. All right, they got 100% of their points. So if there were 70 points for them to get, they got 70 points. That is great, okay? That is interesting when we want to dive deeper, because remember, high school is still a little bit of a transition from legacy to the new next generation. That is really cool. When you put that together, this 44, so they've got the best and they've also got the worst, Okay? So when you average those out, and the good news is it's 60% at 83, 40% at 44, ends up with a 67. Okay? That is not 75, so it's not considered meeting or exceeding. They have the same label as CPS. But for that 1 year last year, they made it. And I'm hoping if it's only 3 years, eventually that 44 will drop off, and the 83 will hang around for at least 1 more year than that 44. We will go into this a lot more deeply at the follow-up workshop. If you go to the district website and you scroll down to a link where it says Department of Education, the state, you can go to school and district profiles. You can click on the map to Nantucket, and you can go to either assessment, achievement, which is all the graphs that Beth shared. And if you go to accountability, it can show you all of the exact point values that we had to earn. Because remember, we have our own targets. It's no longer this 240 thing where everyone gets 100. Our targets are based upon our previous year's score. Okay? The closer to 500, the smaller the target changes. I've found out that it's roughly 1 to 1.5 points. So if you're at 497 of an average 1 year, they want you to get to 488 and 5/10 the next year. Okay? If you're at 460 though, because the gap there's a lot more room for growth, your improvement target might be up 5 or 6 points. Okay? That's just law of averages, right? If you're at 530, the only way to improve a 530 would be to get higher than a 530. It's like taking a 95 on a test, and that's your average for the quarter, and you want to get a 95, you need to keep getting 95s, right? The minute you get 94, you actually brought your average down. So the state factors that in. Very fair system, because every school, every district has its own target based upon their previous year's data. In closing, okay, NIS met the 75% cumulative target with an 82. That's just for last year, for 2019. And I just showed out, that was really great. There's an 89 for all students. Remember, high school had 100 in the lowest achieving. It had an 89 for all students. High school also met that target, an 83, just when the average of 2 years together didn't make the 75. But that 83, as you saw, was the highest number we had up in that grid. So the shift is going from 200 to 280, think 500s. Okay, we talked about this in the past. One of our district goals, we want to move to the top half of the state. We want to be above 500, okay? The negative thing of averages is that you actually could have more students below 500, so visualize this carefully. If you went with a median of, say, 500, and half your kids are below 500, and half your kids are above, so median score is 500, that would be an interesting thing to look at. Because you could have more kids below 500 not meeting it. You could have 60% of your kids not meeting it. But if you had a few kids score near the top at like 550 up to 560, because it's average, it brings the overall average score of the entire population up. That's the one negative thing that I can think of for averages. I think it's more fair than the old CPI system, but we have to watch that carefully. Because we wouldn't want to just say, oh, we're 510, yet 60% of our kids are below, okay? And it just happens to be that it's almost a separation. Kids are doing really well, the kids are falling off. But when you look at the lowest achieving, which is why the state puts those numbers out there, you can see there's a lot of good news to celebrate. Which, the last thing is, this is just a preview for those who are coming back next Tuesday. At CPS, the scores were flat, but when you dig deeper, there's also a lot of positive news there. The high needs group scored an 84 for their improvement targets. The English learner or former English learner group scored 84 also. And then students with disabilities were at 88, okay? So I can't wait for you all to come back, next week. Hopefully you're all gonna be here. Because when the principals present, there's some even more good news. But as Beth pointed out, there's a few places where, hey, we have some work to do. But overall, this is pretty exciting to see two of your schools make the 75. That hasn't happened in a long time. You guys, that's really great. Any other closing thoughts? Fini.
I'm exhausted.
Wait till next week.
Trying to write everything down. It's great. I'm very excited, and I agree with you that I think having schools have their own targets and working off of that makes so much more sense. And I really thank you both for the enthusiasm that you're clearly bringing to this. It's very important information. But I think the way you've just presented it, I can't help be excited, and I'm looking forward to next week already. So thank you very much for your work that you've done so far.
A couple of questions and then maybe a comment. Is there a place online to follow cohorts? Or do we just have to look at old scores and go
Yeah,
diagonally?
We have to do it manually.
Yeah.
There isn't a program, the state doesn't use it in Edwin Analytics, which is how they
Okay.
analyze data. We don't have a chance to do that, which is a shame. We can do it ourselves.
Well, it confirms my search was a failure because it's not there. The biology scores, are those now a graduation requirement? And what do you have to get for the diploma? Is it just exceeding and meeting expectations, or how does that work?
Great question. So since biology through last year is still under legacy, okay, 240 is proficient, but if you scored a 220, you've passed. Your label needs improvement, but you have to work with a guidance counselor and a science teacher to write what's called an educational proficiency plan. This also applies to ELA and math, which means you don't have to retake the test. You can get a diploma, but you have to go through an extra document to say, what are you going to do to improve that? And usually it's, I'm going to take this class junior year, I'm going to take 4 years of science, something like that, okay? With the new system, okay, it's not exactly, if you go 500, if you go down to 470, it's interesting because partial is 470 to 500, but where the state has started setting those cutoffs is around 450. So they actually dip a little bit below into what used to be called the warning failing category. But that will basically determine diploma. But as you know, kids can retake the test. They're given opportunities in, I think it's January or February? February in high school to retake the biology test.
So
Junior year or
I don't
senior
know if
year.
you've lost me or not. Excuse me for interrupting. Henceforth,
Yeah.
with the new test.
Partially
and
is passing.
Scoring.
Partially is passing and even a piece of not
Oh,
meeting.
okay, so partially is
Yep,
meeting the graduation to the diploma requirement.
Yes.
yep.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yep. Our experience, whenever the state switches the system, when it's high stakes on the high school side, they set the bar a little bit lower the first year with the idea they're going to bump it up as kids are more familiar with that type of test, which supposedly is more rigorous than the legacy MCAS, which you can see in the advanced and the proficient bar graphs.
Good. My comments are twofold. First of all, thanks to Ms. Hallett for getting the CPS scheduling task force, if that's what you're calling it, going. And I'm mentioning that now because clearly 7th grade math is an area of concern still. Some regression, need more effort. I can quote it all back at you, but I read the scores too. I hope, it's my opinion, that that is a factor as you look at scheduling to try to get these kids more math. If there's been regression and this year's kids currently are getting less math than last year's, and I recognize the cohorts can be different, but they're actually getting less math than last year. And I just have to believe that needs to be at the top of the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a couple of things. I think it's great to have kids compare themselves to their grade and to themselves, not to the previous grades, because every grade is certainly different. It makes it really positive for the students and less stressful. I know at times I find myself comparing myself to my other students and my peers, which is very stressful, like if you got a bad SAT score or anything like that. But if you focus on next time doing better than you did last time, it makes for a really positive environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You take an SAT? How'd you do? Say what? Ooh, that's close. That was 14. I don't know if they're all the same. We did better. His SATs? talking about.
I'll come back.
Okay.
So I did better. I'll listen.
Dealing with that enthusiasm and looking forward to actually understanding it next time. Committee discussion and votes to be taken. Vote to approve fiscal year 21 budget directives.
Make a motion?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Steve, you pondering something?
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't a zero-sum game. I think we added to the directives that we consider numbers of students and curriculum changes in our thinking. And I think that that's also now a concern with the new school committee goals. And some of the language appears to make it a zero-sum game. And I just want to state that I don't see it that way with our increasing enrollments and so forth. But with that comment having been made, I will vote to approve the directives.
Mike, do you have anything?
So thank you, and I'll look forward to that passing. In the last 10 years, we haven't had a zero increase in the budget.
No.
So,
What I meant
and I
by
would be-
zero-sum was, if we add a buck, we gotta find a way to take away a
right,
buck.
and that's not what
That's-
we have done.
Okay, understood.
Motion's been made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, vote to approve the donation from Martell and Alice Crowley to Nantucket High School for woodshop tech in the amount of $750.
Oh, so moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
A vote to approve the donation from the Joseph L. Viera Fund, Inc. to Nantucket High School Athletics for 36 pairs of Champion sweatpants and 65 pairs of Champion training shorts with the Whaler logo for football practice purposes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A vote to approve the donation from Brenda Knoll and Kevin Martin to NHS for woodshop tech in the amount of $1,000.
So
Move
moved.
to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
A vote to approve donation from Educate Inc. for CPS as a referral bonus of $200.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Vote to approve the donation from Muzak to NES Cape Cod Symphony Field Trip in the amount of $1,500.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
September 17th, 2019 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Transfers and invoices. Have a motion approved?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report.
Okay, first thing that we're gonna look at is the enrollment. Excuse me. It's interesting this year. I think this is the first year in the 10 years that I've been here that the actual increase in enrollment from the previous October is in single digits. And we've had, since 2010, increases of 50 to 100 students a year. And this year, at this point, from the previous October, we've gone up 2 students, 1686 to 1688. Now, having said that, we've had discussions and the needs of children have increased. The children coming in terms of special needs or ELL needs or emotional and mental health needs. So just want to make that point. The high school enrollment at 537, you may notice that there is a change from September of 153 to 143. And that's an interesting figure. And John, I'm sure would say that that is due to the fact that over the summer, credits come in, and students sometimes move from that freshman class to the sophomore class. And then the Cyrus Pierce numbers have increased over last year's numbers. The intermediate school is a little bit smaller than last year. That's due to that large sixth grade rolling out of the intermediate and into the middle school. And the numbers at the Nantucket Elementary at 403 is larger than last year, and that's due to the large pre-K numbers that we have this year of 60. Next month, we will start with the entries and re-entries. Zona, that is something that you always want to see. We don't do that from September to October because there are so many changes.
It would
in
be
that
nice
month.
to put a footnote, though, just so that whole thing about credits, I don't think I've heard that comment before, and I think that's kind of important.
Okay. The homeschooling report is just something that you've asked for each year. We have very few homeschooling children that are registered. We have a fourth grader, a fifth grader, and a sixth grader this year. And then I think Beth was going to bring you up to speed about the joint conference and encourage our school committee members to attend that if they can.
So in November, from November 6th to 9th, there's a joint conference opportunity with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. I have here just a conference schedule I'm happy to share with you. So you can see what the panels are going to be. I don't know if I have enough for everybody. I hope I have enough for the school
I
committee.
have one.
I have one too. Thank you.
I think there are some very interesting topics that are going to be addressed. I certainly hope to attend myself. It's going to help me in my growth for this year and then also for next year. I would love to have any of you join me for 1 day, 2 days. Saturday is not a full conference day. It's there's a lunch with students, and they have not yet shared if there are any other panels going on. But it is in Hyannis, close by. And I certainly hope to have some company if I can go. I think another piece to remember is it would be a great opportunity to hear what other school committees are doing, other superintendents are doing on the topics that you'll see in those panel offerings and the conference offerings. So I'd love to hopefully have you with me.
Mr. Chairman, we sort of slid by, I didn't have a chance to say. I just want to make a note for our future budget considerations that the CPS enrollment's going to go up again next year by a significant amount, about 20 kids. So I think we need to keep that in mind as we look at the budgeting for next year.
Mike, how do we check on the homeschooling, just out of curiosity?
People homeschooling are required to enroll through the central office. And we've had this discussion before at school committee. It's hard to know if we have everybody that is homeschooling their children. If they sort of go underground, so to speak, we may not know that. Now, sometimes a parent will call and say, why isn't this child enrolled in school? And then we'll look into it. But it's difficult to tell. There are different reasons for homeschooling children. Sometimes people will do that for religious reasons. Sometimes they will do it simply because they feel that is educationally what is best for their child. I've seen it done very well by parents, and I've seen it done very poorly by parents. And so I think in answer to your question, we don't know exactly whether we have captured everybody that is homeschooling their child.
Okay, so we can't send out the,
If we know about them, we
the
certainly
black
do.
helicopters
Yeah,
to find
I
them?
mean, we do. And then it's not on there, but I imagine you wanted to talk about the On the Horizon. And in talking to Jen Iller previously, she had asked if we could have a workshop on October 8th, and I think at a previous meeting, you had asked for a deeper dive. And what you saw tonight may be deep enough. I don't know how deep you want to go before you're in over your head. But the principals are prepared to give you more information, and if, I think it was your wish to do that in a workshop setting.
I think we keep it on the calendar. I think it's important.
Do we have a
No.
time for that meeting?
We could do it at
We do full?
4 o'clock, you could do it at 5 o'clock, but whenever you're going to be there.
I think
4 o'clock?
Good, yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be 18,000 years from now.
4 o'clock. And then on the 15th, which is a regularly scheduled school committee meeting, there was an expression by the school committee that you be able to talk about how to keep your goals at the forefront of the meeting. I don't know if I'm capturing, Pauline, your wish, and I think you asked to do that in a workshop. And then we'd be on our regular schedule in November with a community school update and ESL update. And perhaps meet with the Veritas staff in November.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's my memory, but I don't recall agreeing to change that evening just to a workshop. I'm very concerned about budget. There's nothing in here about budget until we look at a calendar on the 19th. Last year, in large part because the town, I acknowledge, didn't give us figures until very late. The entire process was really set back, and I am not comfortable with designating an entire meeting just for looking at our goals.
Well, we can add budget to that. I think that workshop can be twofold, can it not?
It can, if that's your desire.
I think
I'm not
You
sure
gonna
that
be
I will
ready?
have the budget planning calendar from town.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
why it has a question mark on November 19th, because that's generated by
Now,
Libby and the town officials.
But I think we can have an overall general conversation
Sure.
to make Mr. Sordovic feel a little bit more comfortable with the process.
well, and hopefully, I don't expect our administrators to come to us with budgets on that date.
Good.
At the same time, well, I try to be real. At the same time, if they're there and can be a part of that conversation, like I said, CPS is gonna have more kids next year. Those kinds of things that we can get started thinking about without waiting till the middle of November and on the town.
Can I just have a comment? The only concern I would have, having gone through the process with the administrative team, is that there is a process that they go through, and I wouldn't want to rush asking for preliminary discussions until Mike's had a chance to work with his principals, assistant principals, and staff, because I think that's important that we hear from them first before.
I was here for this last year.
Right, but I mean, just as a staff person at the admin, that's how it begins.
I understand
so-
that, but none of that's listed until apparently December. And that just makes me nervous.
It takes a while for the numbers
No, I
to develop,
understand
mean,
that.
particularly from the town.
That's why I think a general
Pretty-
conversation in the workshop.
And pretty much things begin with a budget forecast
Hmm.
that Martin will provide for us. And I don't know if you want to recognize him,
Martin?
Mr. Chair.
Usually we start with roll forward number, which is to move existing current expense and contractual obligations into the future year without any expense increases of any sort. So what we usually do in this year, I've already sent the budgets, but the due date to be back from principals and department heads is October 25th. So it would be very early to discuss any kind of budgetary forecasts and numbers. We have a vague idea of where we're going to do with roll forward, but I don't think the number will be firmed up by then. That being said, if there are any general questions about the budget or considerations of the school committee, we can prepare and I can do my best to answer what's asked.
Well, I
that's how
think,
we go usually.
I think what I'm hearing is Steve would like to talk about the budget in general, not in specific, in terms of numbers.
Yeah, and I think it's a
But
school
where
committee,
might we
yeah.
expect enrollment
Yes.
increases or
I think
decreases?
school committee, we just want to make sure the directives are on track, that we haven't forgotten anything, and that when you guys finish up your numbers, that's all part of it. I think as school committee, we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page and nothing's left out of that
Yep.
calculation.
So we'll add budget onto that
Yeah.
workshop.
Onto that workshop, that's
Okay.
fine. Sure.
Thank you.
And is that still 6 PM, even though it's a workshop?
It can be whatever you prefer.
We do 5 maybe on that day.
5?
You want to try 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock work for
Okay.
everybody? Works for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, is that the 15th or the
Yes.
8th?
On the
15.
15.
4 for the 8th,
Well, that's what they do, 5.
It's 4 for the 8th?
4 for the 8th.
4 for the 8th,
and
Okay.
5 for the 15th.
Did they say that? Did I miss that?
Yes,
You missed
Okay,
you did miss it.
I'm glad I asked.
Okay, any subcommittee presentations?
Not for me.
Yeah, I just report that the policy committee did meet and we attempted to review the CPS handbook, but we just felt that maybe it wasn't quite ready. So we're tabling that while it's just adjusted a tad.
May I go back to that second workshop on the 15th? 5:30 might be best because we have 2 school committee members who are going to be in negotiations that
Oh, yeah.
afternoon.
Oh, that's right.
So instead of 5 o'clock,
5:30.
I would
Okay.
suggest that you go
On the
with
15th.
5:30.
Fine.
Thank you.
Joel, you're up.
I just, couple things. I'd like to express, probably from most of the students, how thankful we are for how Friday went. It came really out of the blue for everyone, and I just want to say thank you to the teachers and most of the kids for staying very calm, and the police for everything going as smoothly as it did. It just really put into perspective how real all of this really is in the society we live. But personally, for myself, I feel much safer knowing how well everything went.
Thanks for that, Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like
Thank
to add kudos too, to our resource officers, the police, fire, everybody shows up. It's really cool, and the administration handled it well from what I've seen, not just in reports, but from friends. And that's great, glad to hear it.
And on a much lighter note, we have homecoming coming up next week, which is awesome. We have hallways on Wednesday, and we're doing our floats on. Floats are on Friday, I believe. And one thing we're stressing this year, last year there was a lot of parent involvement with the freshman class. We're stressing that it's a student-operated event, so that we get if kids need to use power tools to cut wood or anything like that. But a lot of the assembly that's going to happen is going to be just kids. That's about all I have.
Nicely
Thank
said.
you, Joel.
And who we playing, Joel? Who we playing?
Monomoy.
Good.
Yeah. Should be a fun game.
So we have the agenda for the next meeting, the workshops are set up. And hopefully the deep dive, I won't end up with a scraped head. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.